Good morning, YouTube. This is man all the rage George Page coming to you live on YouTube. As far as I can remember as a kid, I've always been a big fan of sci-fi. I love different movies and TV shows. I used to collect comics, when I was younger, and I just love the fantasy and the ideology, especially, TV shows like Star Trek, which I grew up watching. And I watched the original Star Trek that starred William Shatner as Captain James C. Kirk and the late Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, and they were great shows. And I did a video a while back where I had where I talked about the battle between Kirk and Spock. As you know, it was an episode where Kirk had to go back to Vulcan and he had to fight for the right of his wife or whatever, and then she picked Kirk and he fought Kirk and he killed his friend Jim. Jim, I will have to kill you. It was classic. But another show after that was Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it came up around about the tail end of the '80s, early '90s, and it starred Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. You know Patrick Stewart, he played Professor X in the X-Men movies, and yeah, it was a great show. It was the Next Generation from Star Trek, and then there was another show that came up just a few years after that, Star Trek DS9. What made the show great was it was the first Star Trek series that featured a black man as the lead role. Now we all know um, about how Star Trek had premiered Nichelle Nichols to play Lieutenant Uhura, who was maybe one of the few black women in that era in the '60s, which she was a part of a very popular show. Even at one point, Miss Nichols, I said before that she was about to leave Star Trek, but Martin Luther King visited stayed on the show because she inspired a lot of young black people at that time. But anyway, the series starred Avery Brooks. As if you ever know who he was originally best known for his character Hawk on the Spitz for Hire series, and even at one point had his own series, A Man Called Hawk. Now, when the series premiered, a lot of people didn't recognize who it was until he opened his mouth and heard his voice, and I realized, hey, that's Hawk, but he had hair. DS9, he played, Commander Benjamin Lafayette Sisko, and he was the head man over a space station in near Bajor, which was a planet that was controlled by Cardassians. Now, originally the spaceship was called Terok Norg, which was a Cardassian name, but it was changed to DS9 when the Federation took over. Now, here's one thing about Benjamin Sisko. He had a kind of disdain towards Jean-Luc Picard because during if you remember that episode of Star Trek when Picard's kidnapped by the Borg and becomes Locutus, and they had the battle at Wolf 759. Benjamin was commanding the ship, which was destroyed, which killed his wife, and so Ben had to raise his son Jake alone. And the premiere episode, he just had a very tense relationship with Captain Picard. But I think eventually the two men, settled the differences. But anyway, I love this show. Just so many different characters. This Star Trek had a lot more continuations than any other Star Trek series. Especially with the story arc of the Dominion War, which was just, kind of like almost like World War II for the for Star Trek. You remember the point. You remember originally in the war that America was pretty much losing to the point we dropped the atom bomb. So, but anyway, I love the show because the fact it was not just for the fact it was just you had a black man who was a commander. He became a captain. He was seen as a religious figure by the people of Bajor, and he was just. And then truth found out that he was actually a product of of a wormhole entity or one of the prophets, because of a special reason. But what I loved about the show was about the relationship between Ben and his son Jake, played by Sirach Lofton. Now, Sirach and Avery still have a good relationship, but I love the storylines they had. Ben was this, even though he was a Federation officer, he could cook. He liked to play baseball with his son. He was smooth, debonair. I mean, even one point he intimidated Worf. But I love the show. It's a great show. But like I said, I love Jake and Ben's relationship. Now, this is from an episode where, Jake was being used by a alien who needed his essence to live. It's kind of like, the alien was like she was like some kind of a succubus. And Jake, remember he wanted to be a writer, and she was kind of way trying to inspire him, but really what she was just draining off his essence. At one point, Jake was almost like somebody who was on drugs, an addict, you know. Well, she was more the addict, but she using Jake for her addiction. And I love that scene where how he hugged his son, and how close they were. They had each other even after he lost his wife. And what I love about the show was the relationship between father and son. Now, if you know, most of the Star Trek captains, well, some of them didn't have like real family connections. Now, like Kirk, he did have a brother, but he died, and he had a son. And his son died, but he didn't raise his son. Picard didn't like kids, and he never had children of his own, but he had a little close relationship with Wesley Crusher. Janeway, she never had children, but she saw her ship, the Voyager, crew as her family. And Archer, I think he never had a family. Really, his father died, and I think he had a lot of like daddy issues and so on. But this is what I loved about, you know, Ben and Jake's relationship, how close they were. They could talk to each other. I mean, I always wish I had that with my father. Even today, Sirach, Lofton, and Avery Brooks are still close. This is one of these Star Trek conventions, and this is a man he worked with since he was about 13, 14 years old, and he was probably like a second father figure for him. Even though now Sirach no longer acts, he owns a restaurant in L.A. He's a father himself with a young daughter. I think he might have some more kids now. And Avery Brooks, I think the last thing he did, I think I've seen him in was the movie History X. I think he's like a lot of these actors. He still do the Star Trek conventions. Every now and then he might pop up in something, but I just love the character he played. It was just something different to see a black man in a position he was, and, especially in the future. But like I said, this was a great show, and I still watch it today. I love all these characters, their story arcs. One thing I'm going to say, rest in peace to Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog, and rest in peace to Renee Auger. I can't say his name right, but you remember his Odo. He passed away last year also. But like I said, if you get a chance, this is still being played, and just watch some classic Star Trek DS9. It's your man George Page, all the rage. Like, subscribe, don't like, don't subscribe. I'm out.